welcome to another video. As you can tell from the title and the thumbnail, today I'm bringing you my February wrap up. A little bit late, but not too late, so be proud of me for that. Yes, I'm wearing my glasses. I surprisingly can see better with them. Just addressing those on my face. They're not a fashion statement. They are actually for my vision, unfortunately. I read a lot in February. I finished TBR Pursuit pretty early in the month and then read a few books outside of that. So I have a total of 9 books that I read in February. I say in February, I finished 2 of them on the 1st of March, but finished them. Like, I still read most of them in February, so I'm having that. Just because I have the stats sheet from G's Core Pile spreadsheet, I will talk to you about like my page count, because I can do that now. So yeah, a total of 9 books in February, and my total page count was 3,414, which is pretty high. Substantially higher than January's was. I don't reckon I'll be able to keep up this pace, but for the shortest month of the year, I'm pretty happy with that page count. So I suppose I'll just get cracking. I read a few of these, you know, it was a month ago now. I might not be able to remember everything about them, so I'm really sorry about that. But of course I do vlog, and the first 5 of these I read during Polathon, and I did vlog every day of Polathon, so if you want some more thoughts on them, then I do go into that in my Polathon vlogs. I do wrap up each day, and I did wrap up all of Polathon on the last day of Polathon, which is Polathon day 7. So if you want more thoughts, then I would suggest checking that out. But I can tell you what I remember, my thoughts and feelings and my star ratings, so we'll get on with that. The first book that I read for Polathon was Explorers on Witch Mountain by Alex Bell. This is the sequel to the Polar Bear Explorers Club, which I read a couple of years ago. I meant to read this for Polathon last year and never got round to it, and then just put it off until Polathon this year. But I'm really glad that I did manage to read that this year. This follows a young girl called Stella Starflake Pearl, who in the first one just desperately wants to join the Polar Bear Explorers Club, but she's a girl and girls aren't supposed to. But you know, she worms her way in there, and then of course there's some sort of peril, and the kids teaming up, forming some fabulous friendships, fighting some carnivorous cabbages, travelling to the coldest part of the north, and then in this one they travel to Witch Mountain. I don't want to say too much because I don't want to spoil the end of the first book with regards to what happens in this one, because it does, so I won't, you know, with it being a sequel and all. But I did enjoy this. I think I gave it 4-star, but let's consult Core Pile. So I gave the characters a 9. I really do love all of the characters in here, feel very connected to them. Stella is a fabulous female protagonist, love her. I gave the atmosphere a 9. Chill, cold atmosphere, you know, polar fantasy vibes. We all know I'm into that, so like, it's gonna be pretty high, isn't it? Writing I gave an 8. Plot I gave an 8. Intrigue an 8. Logic a 6. Just because why is there a team of kids running off to do this when there are like no adults willing to help? The morality of the Explorer Club itself is questionable. And enjoyment an 8, which gives it an 8 overall, which is a 4-star. I did really enjoy this. I do thoroughly recommend this series. It is very atmospheric with the chilly atmosphere, you know, you've got the icy magic, there's polar bears and penguins and all sorts of cute creatures, a tiny dinosaur. Love it. And yeah, just some fabulous little kids on an adventure, saving the day, exploring whilst they can, making new discoveries, and there's all sorts of like weird creatures. As I said, there are the carnivorous cabbages, there are the frost fairies or the frosties, which cause frostbite, and frostbite is where the frosties bite you. Honestly, so much weird stuff in here, but it's all good fun. So yeah, 4 stars overall. I did thoroughly enjoy that one. Next up, I finally got around to reading Winter of the Witch by Catherine Arden. This is the 3rd and final book in the Winter Night trilogy, the first one being The Bear and the Nightingale, then we have The Girl in the Tower, and finally The Winter of the Witch. And I absolutely adore this series. Every book has got 5 stars from me. I love them so so tremendously. These stories follow a young girl called Vasya. She is not what society wants her to be in any way, shape or form. Pretty much it's her defying everything she was ever told to be. In the first book, the religion of the land is changing and Vasya can see the spirits. She can see the little spirits and creatures that guard the house and guard the bathhouse and the oven and all of those things. But she can see all of those creatures and she can feed them and she leaves gifts for them and like her belief keeps them alive and like her acknowledgement keeps them alive. But with the religion changing, like the old spirits and the old gods are kind of in peril and Vasya's journey coincides with that and is just tremendous. I loved this book so much. I cried like 27 pages into it. It was intense and I love it. I love Vasya. I love the whimsy and the magic and the folklore and the language, the way it's written. Like some people say that these books are a bit slow going and they can be hard to get through. They're quite dense, but oh my god, the payoff for that atmosphere, absolutely adore it. Love it. 5 stars. In terms of core pile, I gave it a 9 for characters, 10 for atmosphere. Like, really, it's really good. 9 for writing, 9 for plot, 9 for intrigue, 9 for logic, and 10 for enjoyment, which gives it a 9.29 overall, which is a 5 star. Absolutely adored this. Next up, we have Never Tell by Catherine Orton. This was the middle grade monthly pick for the month of February. The live show has happened and it was on my channel, so I will leave a link for that somewhere for you. I could not remember an awful lot of this until we did that live show and then it started to come back to me. But I do remember enjoying it whilst I was reading it. It just seems to be quite easily forgettable, which is a shame because I remember having fun. I remember feeling the suspense. I remember being like wrapped up in that atmosphere and I remember a few little whimsical scenes, but overall a lot of it has faded from my memory, but I remember feeling good whilst reading it. But as some of my memory has come back since that live show, I can tell you this is about a young girl called Lena who is in a prison camp. She was conceived in the prison camp, she was born in the prison camp, she has grown up in this prison camp, and the beginning of the story is her escaping from this prison camp. And she's with her friend Bogdan when they bump into a sorceress. And the sorceress has a pack of shadow wolves that will eat people and turn them into shadows, and in order to escape from her, the kids may need a little sorcery of their own. It takes place all across the Siberian wilderness, very wintry, very atmospheric. I really got those vibes. Just a shame that it was so forgettable for me. I am really disappointed by that, but I remember having a good time whilst I was reading it, and I did my core pile rating immediately afterwards, so this will reflect my accurate thoughts from like when I read it. So I gave the characters a 7, atmosphere an 8, writing an 8, plot 7, intrigue 7, logic 7, and enjoyment 8. I won't talk for too long about this one though because there is a whole live show about it, which as I said I will have linked somewhere, so if you want really in-depth thoughts from me and Gav on this one, then check out the Middle Grade Monthly live stream. Next up, I read Through the Whitewood by Jessica Leake. This is not a sequel to Beyond a Darkened Shore, but it's like a companion. The characters that appear in Beyond a Darkened Shore do pop up in this one, so recommend that you read that one first. This one follows a girl called Katya who has the power to freeze things. She has some very powerful icy magic that she is not entirely sure how to control. She accidentally murders a lot of people in her village and is sent to the terrifying palace of Prince Alexander, who has a bit of a reputation for being a bit of a monster himself. It gets kind of romancy. I don't consider that a spoiler because I'm pretty sure it's in the blurb. Sasha offers Katya friendship and a chance to embrace her power rather than fear it, so they kind of learn to understand each other. And there is a looming threat. The kingdom is at risk and Katya may be able to help with that. This really took me by surprise. It's set in Kiev and Rus, which took me ages to work out because it says that it's set in Kiev And then like my history brain was like, but like Kiev as the Ukraine, or Kiev as part of Kiev and Rus, I don't know. And then like within 20 pages it had told me that it's Kiev and Rus. So again, we have the like Slavic folklore in there, which I love, and thanks to this series I cannot get enough of that Slavic folklore, and that is present in here as well. So I think it really helped with like getting over the book hangover that the Winter Night trilogy gives, because love it, because we still have some of the like spirit characters and a lot of that Slavic folklore that I enjoy. There's also the Firebird mythology in here as well, which I really enjoyed. Overall, it just took me by surprise. It's a bit more romancy than I usually like, but for some reason I really like this. So let's have a pop through my ratings. So for characters I gave it an 8. For atmosphere, an 8, for writing an 8, for plot 7, intrigue 7, logic 7, and enjoyment 8, which gives it an overall rating of 7.57, which is a 4-star. And yeah, that feels very accurate for me. It took me by surprise by how much I enjoyed it, but similarly, Beyond a Dark and Shore did the same thing. So I think Jessica Leake's writing, like this is my idea of a fluffy read, because I don't do contemporary at all. So I think Jessica Leake, for me, is that like just perfect mix of fantasy folklore and that like softer romance mixed together just to be a light, fluffy, enjoyable read. And that is definitely what I got from this. So yeah, I enjoyed it. I recommend. And then for the last book of Polathon, I read Explorers on Black Ice Bridge by Alex Bell, which is the sequel to Explorers on Witch Mountain, so it is the third and final book in the Polar Bear Explorers trilogy. And again, can't really tell you what this one is about, but similar vibes to the second one, still following Stella Starflake Pearl and her band of friends on another wild adventure with wild discoveries. And why are the kids facing this threat without the parents? I'm pretty sure I rated this exactly the same as well. So we have 9 for characters, 9 for atmosphere, 8 for writing, 8 for plot, 8 for intrigue, 6 for logic, and 8 for enjoyment, giving us a total of 8, which is a 4-star read, which is exactly the same as what I gave the second one. It's a very consistent series. I do love all 3 of the books in this, and as I said before, I recommend. The like polar fantasy vibes are so there, and it's this series, or at least the first book in this series, that really solidified my love for polar fantasy. So if you want some polar fantasy vibes and you haven't read this series and you like middle grade, I really recommend. I enjoyed them a lot. Then outside of Polathon, but the last book for TBR Pursuit for February was Shadows of Winterspell by Amy Wilson, and this was unfortunately my lowest rated book of February, and it only got a 3-star rating overall. This really just did not captivate my interest. I was not really into it. I was very bored. It wasn't what I was expecting either, but that's not the bad thing about it. It's about a young girl who knows about magic, lives on the edge of this magical forest, and is the daughter of who is now known as the Shadow King. Now, I would have thought that was a spoiler, but it happens so early. Her mother died and her father's grief took over, and he kind of turned into this Shadow King, and his shadows overtook the realm, and it's all a very dangerous place to live now. And our main character, Stella, she's aware of all this, she's aware of magic, but she's desperate to get away from it, so she wants to go to a normal school to make some normal friends. But of course it doesn't quite work out that way. However, I thought this was more going to be about a normal girl discovering magic, not a magic girl wanting to be normal. But either way, I was not captivated by this. I was bored, I wanted to put it down, I just wasn't having the best time. But it wasn't necessarily bad, I just don't think it was for me. So let's go through my ratings. I gave it a 5 for characters, 5 for atmosphere, 5 for writing, 5 for plot, 6 for intrigue, 6 for logic, and 6 for enjoyment. So not terrible, just very meh, in my opinion. And then we can move on to some books outside of TBR Pursuit, because I still had some time. The first book that I picked up after finishing TBR Pursuit was Gods of Jade and Shadow by Silvia Moreno Garcia. I buddy read this with Pris, and holy hell, I loved this so much. I had such a good time with this. So this is like 1920s jazz and swing Mexico meets Mayan mythology. Our main character, Cassiopeia, accidentally wakes one of the Mayan death gods, and the story goes from there. I don't really want to say too much because I don't want to spoil this, because a lot of this I was unaware of, but as I say, 1920s swing Mexico meets Mayan mythology. Main character awakens a Mayan death god, and they kind of go on a road trip together on a mission to find some lost things. And there are demons and ghosts and otherworldly creatures along the way, and there is like this big confrontation at the end. It's kind of one Mayan death god against the other Mayan death god to decide who gets to rule the underworld, and Cassiopeia, by waking one of the Mayan death gods, has got herself mixed up in that somehow. But yeah, I absolutely loved this. I loved the dynamic between Cassiopeia and, I've forgotten his name, Huncame, yay! But I love the dynamic between them and the relationship that develops as they go on this journey. I think it was absolutely brilliant, and Cassiopeia as a main character, so fierce, so kick-ass, so sassy. I loved this a lot. I really recommend. As for my ratings, I gave this a 9 for characters, an 8 for atmosphere, an 8 for writing, a 9 for plot, an 8 for intrigue, 8 for logic, and a 9 for enjoyment. I had such a good time with this, and that brings that out at an 8.43, which is a 4-star overall. Like, so close to a 5, but just not quite. But yeah, I thoroughly enjoyed this and really recommend if you have not read it. Such a good time. Next, the running joke that is me and Becca not finishing Crooked Kingdom comes to an end because we read Crooked Kingdom. This beastie book that we've been putting off forever. Finally read it. I enjoyed this one a lot more than I enjoyed Six of Crows. I feel like I have a bit of an unpopular opinion with Six of Crows in that I don't love it as much as the masses do. I think a big reason that people love it is the characters, and I don't like Kaz and Inej. Don't like, that's not right. I don't like Kaz and Inej as much as I like the other ones. And in this, my feelings for those characters really solidified. I fell in love with Nina and Matthias and Wylan and Jesper a lot. I just don't feel quite as strongly about Kaz and Inej, which again seems unpopular. If for any reason you are unfamiliar with these books, the Six of Crows duology kind of follows on after the Grisha trilogy. So in Six of Crows we follow Kaz and his band of criminals as they are hired to do the impossible and break into the ice court to break out a very expensive criminal, or scientist more so, a very expensive hostage who is worth a lot, and Kaz and his crew are hired to, as I say, do the impossible, break into the impenetrable, and then break out again. This one pretty much picks up exactly where the other one left off, but I won't say what or how or who or when or why because spoilers, but this one made so much more sense to me. I felt like it was more believable. Something that really bugged me in Six of Crows is that it's constantly pushed in your face how young the characters are. Didn't do that so much in this one, so I found it easier to overlook that and put them at more of a believable age in my brain. But also just the motivation in this one seems a lot more real. The emotion seemed a lot more real. And then towards the end, I was bawling. Certain thing happens, and I was bawling. And yeah, so made me cry. But I still don't absolutely adore it as much as I think everybody else does. So let's just go through my ratings. Characters, I gave a 9. Completely think it deserves that. Atmosphere, I gave an 8. Writing, an 8. Plot, an 8. Intrigue, an 8. Logic, 7. Enjoyment, 8. Which brings it out at a solid 8 overall, which is a 4-star, which feels correct to me. So yeah, finally managed to read this one. And then last but not least, my throat is starting to get dry now, I read Wondersmith, The Calling of Morrigan Crow by Jessica Townsend. This is the sequel to Nevermore, again by Jessica Townsend. I can't tell you too much about what this one's about, but if you are unfamiliar with what Nevermore is about, it is about a young girl called Morrigan Crow who is a cursed child, and she is destined to die on the eve of her 11th birthday. However, she is whisked away to the magical land of Nevermore by a very eccentric man named Jupiter North, who enrolls her in some trials to determine her fate. Nevermore is a really whimsical, magical place, and the way Jessica Townsend writes that, like, it's so just believable. Outrageous, but believable. Just wildly magical things happen, and, like, you don't doubt it. But I again loved this one, but I don't think I loved it as much as I loved the first one. There are a lot more characters, I want to say, in this one. You're introduced to a new, like, group of characters, and I don't feel like they're as strong as some of the other characters are, and I think that let it down just a little bit. But also just I didn't have as much fun with this one. But that does not by any means mean that I did not have fun, because I still thoroughly enjoyed this, and this is, like, right on the brink of a 5-star. So I gave it an 8 for characters, a 9 for atmosphere, 9 for writing, 9 for plot, 9 for intrigue, 9 for logic, 9 for enjoyment. So it's literally as close to a 5-star as it can get without being a 5-star. And that is an 8.86 overall, which is a 4-star. I still absolutely adored it. And I'm really excited for the 3rd book in this series. Yeah, I'm so glad I finally got on this bandwagon, because I love it. But yeah, that is the last book that I read in February. So, here's my stack of books. I think I had a pretty solid reading month. I'm pretty happy with that. I mean, I read a lot, and a lot of them I enjoyed a lot as well. So yeah, I'm pretty happy with my February reading, especially considering it's the shortest month of the year. Here's to hoping I can keep my pace up and read a lot in March as well. Fingers crossed. If you have read any of these books and want to chat to me about any of them, please do. I am always up for that. But otherwise, I'm going to stop because my throat is seriously dry. So thank you so much for watching. I hope you have enjoyed. Feel free to give us a like, chat to me down below. If you aren't subscribed and fancy doing that, then I would deeply appreciate it. Thank you. And yeah, I will see you in the next one. Bye!